The NBA playoffs are here, but the best version of the Lakers isn't. With both Luka Doncic and Austin Reaves out for at least a couple more weeks, they're relying on a 41-year-old LeBron James to save their season. And somehow, he just delivered 3 straight games of 25 points and 10 assists to maintain home court advantage. This shouldn't be possible. So was this recent stretch just a blip in father time? Or can he pull off one last superhuman feat? In today's video brought to you by PrizePicks, we're going to figure out exactly what LeBron's been doing, why it's worked, and whether or not it's sustainable. Because for the most part, he spent the bulk of his 23rd season playing more of a connective role for the Lakers. When Luka's on the court, things are almost always going to run through him, which means he had to find ways to improve possessions without the ball. Generally, that would mean spotting up and knocking down threes, but the three-point shot hasn't been there like in prior years. After back-to-back seasons of hitting over 42% of his catch-and-shoot threes, he's down at 33%. Whether it's a fluke or maybe the back injuries he's dealt with, it hasn't been a reliable option, so he's slowly gone away from it. For years, he'd been taking around 3 to 3.5 a game. Now he's down at 2, his lowest mark in 7 years. Instead, he's taken advantage of these spot-up situations by putting more pressure on the basket. He's one of the smartest players ever, which really stands out with the way he'll time up his cuts to make himself an easy target. For example, when Luka sets up spread pick and roll and Messi helps on the ball, Zion's gonna have to come over to tag Hayes. Bron in that weak side corner sees it the entire time, so as soon as Zion commits, he dives baseline for a lob. This time, Luka's gonna attack an early isolation with Bron one pass away on the wing. When Toppin starts to help at the nail, he floats up top, and he's just waiting for Luka to turn and see him. As soon as that happens, he darts into a full sprint and puts Jay Huff on a poster. It's almost impossible to comprehend how explosive he still is. On this one, the ball starts in the paint, and Brunson turns his head away from Bron for just a fraction of a second, which is all it takes to cause a complete breakdown. That explosiveness really stands out as a slasher. Again, he's one pass away from Luka, and when his defender helps at the nail, it seems like a pretty standard recovery. But before he can even commit to a closeout, Bron's already getting around him on a drive to the rim. As a defense, you just can't give him the middle of the floor, and the Lakers know this, so they'll often stack the baseline with him in the slot. If his man helps at the nail, he'll have a lane to attack and do what he does best. This makes it so much harder to load up on Luka. The Cavs are in a zone here, so the Lakers set up a high ball screen with nobody on the opposite wing. The goal is to get Mitchell to commit so that when Bron gets the ball, he's got a free lane to the middle, forcing the rest of the defense to make split-second decisions. Because of how quickly he processes the game though, his decisions are a split second faster. So think about the amount of different ways he can start these possessions off the ball. This time they've got him back on the weak side by himself while they set up Spain pick and roll. Allen's forced to tag, and when closing out, he fails to take away the middle, which then forces Mobley to step up and leads to a layup for Ayton. Here's one from a few months ago in Denver. He's one pass away, while Luka looks to get a switch on to Jamal Murray. The Nuggets don't want to give up a mismatch, so they put 2 on the ball, which stresses the entire defense. Jones has to pick up Rui in the short roll while Hardaway takes Hayes, leaving Gordon in a 2-on-1 situation. But before he can even react, Bron's diving down the middle of the paint. The entire idea here is that he's spacing the floor without posing a real catch-and-shoot threat. Typically in a spread pick and roll setup like this, you'd see Anthony Black bringing some sort of help to the nail. But he doesn't want to risk losing Bron on a cut or a drive, so he stays home, which allows Luka to get to the paint and toss a lob. These spot-up situations are only the tip of the iceberg though. When you're that big, athletic, and smart, there's no shortage of ways your skill set can be utilized. And that malleability is what allows him to remain so valuable, adapting to different roles or even positions from play to play. For example, in certain lineups, they really like to use him as a ball screener for Reaves with their big in the dunker, which puts defenses into a real bind. You don't want to switch and give either of them a mismatch, but if you let him catch the ball in the short roll, now you're back to dealing with his downhill playmaking. For similar reasons, the Lakers have also implemented down screens into their offense. Because of that downhill threat, you can't let him catch the ball with space, but switching means giving up a mismatch, and that's when he'll establish inside position for easy offense. For the first time in LeBron's entire career, more than half of his 2-pointers this season have been assisted on. Some of that is this newfound off-ball utility in the half court, playing off of Luka or Reaves in a variety of ways. He's also been a force in transition, streaking alongside ball handlers or leaking out after missed shots, so he fits the profile of an off-ball wing who's really benefiting from the creation of his teammates. Not only is he leading the entire NBA in fast break points at 41 years old, which again is incomprehensible, he's averaging over 1.5 dunks a game, which is his highest mark in a decade and more than some of his peak athletic years. Like I said earlier though, most of these opportunities have come in that more connective role for the Lakers. He's found ways to make himself valuable away from the ball, but it's just that, away from the ball. Throughout the course of this season, he's initiated offense on occasion, but if either Luka or Reaves are on the court, they're the ones running the show. Unfortunately for LA, both sustained injuries against the Thunder a week ago that put an end to their regular seasons. With 5 games remaining, in the midst of a race for home court advantage, they had to turn to LeBron to run the offense. And not only did he deliver, he exceeded all expectations. Before we get into that though, I want to thank PrizePicks for sponsoring today's video. If you know you can play responsibly and you have the means to do so, PrizePicks is America's #1 app for sports picks. So if you're looking for a place to get in on the action throughout the playoffs, use code HMA and get started. Tomorrow we've got some play-in action, starting with the Hornets and the Heat. I'm expecting lots of pace, lots of offense, and that's when LaMelo's at his best, so we're taking him for more than 30.5 points and assists. On the other side, I think Charlotte's gonna have to over-index on the paint and bring extra help to the post, so I like Bam for more than 3 assists, a mark he's hit in 11 of his last 12 games. And it's that simple. Find the stat you want, pick more or less, and you've got your lineup. If you sign up for PrizePicks with code HMA and play $5, you get $50 in lineups. So download the app or click the link in the description to get started, and let me hear your picks down in the comments. Even in year 23, a LeBron-led offense is going to start with consistently running the floor in transition. After missed shots or turnovers, he's always looking to leak out, which leads to easy offense. And when you put a ball handler next to him against an unset defense, his instincts as a cutter and athleticism are pretty much impossible to guard. But in the past week, he's been the ball handler, and we're seeing that he's still a legit engine in the open floor, so the roles have been reversed. He's the one looking for the ball in the backcourt, while his teammates leak out for easy offense. In these spots, his processing speed pops off the screen. While grabbing this rebound, he notices that there's nobody in front of LaRavia, so as soon as he comes down with it, he chucks it 50 feet, resulting in an open dunk. On this one, Ayton contests Colin Gillespie at the top of the key, meaning that if he runs the floor, they'll get a cross match. Bron, recognizing this, throws an absolute dot where he knows Ayton can get to it for a layup. Between the instant decision-making and pinpoint accuracy, defenses don't have room for error. All Timmy needs is a step on everybody else for Bron to perfectly lead him in stride to the basket. In the event that he grabs a rebound and there's nobody out ahead of him, that's when you'll see him push the pace himself. This part of his game is truly as timeless as it gets. His straight line speed, at his size, is still a superpower. If he's got space to build ahead of steam, he's really tough to stay in front of, and that's just classic downhill LeBron. Speed is only part of the problem though. There's also the power, getting cut off, then using his shoulder to bump and separate before finishing a tough layup. So it's never as simple as just staying in front of him. Middleton does that really well, only to get thrown off his spot, and look at how open he is. It takes more than one defender to prevent him from scoring, and sometimes even that isn't enough. On the season, he's one of only 3 players averaging at least 7 points a game in transition, and those plays are generating a hyper-efficient 1.3 points per possession, so defenses have to do everything in their power to keep him away from the basket. Usually that means multiple guys will converge towards the middle of the floor, building a wall in between him and the paint. But what that means is there's probably a teammate who's unaccounted for, and he's always quick to recognize these advantages. In a 5-on-4 situation, Gafford parks in the middle, creating a 2-on-1 advantage on the left side. So he moves the ball to Kennard, who swings it one more to Rui for a wide open corner 3. Bron might be quick, but he's never rushed. Again, they've got numbers, and he's patiently mapping the floor as he looks for the best way to take advantage. Gafford parks in the middle, creating that same 2-on-1 in the wing, and leading to another quality 3 for Rui. He sees everything before the defense sees it, which allows him to manipulate them. LaRavia is beating everybody down the left side, so Bron only looks to his right. Flag thinks this ball is going to Rui, which creates a big enough window to score. To add even more stress on defenses, they'll set up early action, like an empty side ball screen for example. Gafford's first instinct is to not let Bron get downhill, which leaves Hayes by himself in the short roll. And keep in mind, the rest of the defense usually isn't set yet, so instead of easily bringing a third defender into the action, it often turns into a straight up 2-on-2, which is where Bron's at his most dangerous. You could say that he mastered every single pick and roll read a decade ago, and I don't even think you'd be wrong. So when things slow down, they'll still turn to a high ball screen. Just like in transition, if he's got space to turn the corner and build up ahead of steam against a backpedaling defender, good luck keeping him away from the basket. The opposing big's position can't even be slightly off. Mark Williams is in a higher drop, but his hips are open to a left-hand driving lane, so Bron attacks that space on his way to the basket. I'll keep using the word incomprehensible. LeBron is getting to the rim 6 times a game and making 75% of those shots, which of course also helps him generate free throws. Only 2 players have exceeded all 3 of those marks this season, Giannis, and Jared Allen. So within the context of a pick and roll, bigs have to prioritize the ball first. And like I said, he's mastered every single read. On this one, Williams gets up in that higher drop to play the drive, while everyone else sinks into the gaps. He can make the shovel pass in either direction. Earlier in that same game, we saw a similar coverage, but this time there's no window to shovel the ball through. That's where his size helps, floating the ball up over the defense for a dunk. To prevent Ayton from scoring after sending a big to the ball, you'll sometimes see teams send the low man early, and this is a classic Bron pass, skipping it to the weak side corner to create a long closeout and eventual breakdown. In simpler terms, you can't let him turn the corner with a numbers advantage or he's gonna create a good shot. Defenses have figured this out too though, and if they have the personnel, they'll just switch across the board. Now instead of having to worry about walling off the rim and rotating behind the play, it's a one-on-one, where he isn't quite the presence he once was. With a head of steam or against the closeout, he can explode into blow-bys. From a standstill though, the burst and change of direction have really regressed, so lengthier athletes don't have too much trouble sticking with him. Against switching, they're usually looking to go to Ayton. He can seal off smaller defenders and go right over the top of them for decent offense. But in situations where the guy switching onto Ayton isn't a mismatch, like PJ Washington, that's when they can force Bron to isolate. And because the blow-by threat isn't as prominent, he'll get pretty jump shot happy. Don't get me wrong, he knows how to create space and he still has that ability to get scorching hot at times, especially when he's feeling the pull-up three. We've seen him completely take over games with this shot. On a night-to-night basis though, he hasn't been a very reliable pull-up jump shooter this season, only posting an effective field goal percentage of 44.3%. For reference, that's worth about 0.89 points per shot. The league average half-court offense is scoring 0.98 points per possession, so a pull-up jumper from LeBron is about 10 points below that mark. Against good defensive teams, who can consistently switch ball screens with big, athletic defenders, the spread pick and roll isn't nearly as effective. When it comes to Bron's one-on-one game, at this point, instead of trying to win with speed, he's a lot more comfortable turning his back to the basket and winning with craft. While the burst might not be what it once was, the strength and balance are. So from the post, he can move basically any defender out of his way and get to his spots. It's more than physical attributes though. He's got a deep bag of moves. What he's often looking to get to is this turnaround jumper over his right shoulder. And because of how much space he creates, he can use that threat to get to other openings, with the use of an up fake for example, which gets his defender in the air. Unlike on the perimeter, these are situations where he can't be left one-on-one, but come with any sort of help and he'll see it, so pick your poison. There's basically no room for error on defense. The big's in position to help and the paint seems crowded. However, this defender gets caught watching the ball for just a split second, which is all it takes to get a dunk. Even a packed paint isn't always enough to deter him as a scorer though. Gafford's in position to help, but he's a touch late coming over, and there's not much you can do once Bron's got that head of steam. It's all about timing up the help. When Kennard cuts through, Draymond lingers near the basket. What the Warriors want to do is force Bron baseline into Draymond. So he just waits until Draymond either doubles or clears out, then he gets to that open space. In addition to timing up his attacks, he'll look to throw off the timing of the help. Gafford's earlier coming over this time, so he fakes a turnaround jumper to get him in the air, which creates an opening. Just like in transition, he's patient, yet quick to recognize advantages. This is pretty standard gap help, but he gets the ball to Bronny in rhythm before that defender can even think about closing out. Then they went to that exact same setup a play later. This time the nail help isn't as prominent, so LeBron attacks one-on-one, only for that defender to come with a late double, and he counters immediately, resulting in another open three for Bronny. At times, it feels like he has eyes in the back of his head, and that's a testament to his spatial awareness. He has that rare ability to map the entire court, even where he's not looking. So when he attacks baseline and collapses the paint, the defense is at his mercy. As he turns back to the middle, he stares at the top of the key to move Brooks out of the way, then skips it cross court to Rui for a wide open triple. Here's another example of that manipulation. The big comes over to help, so the low man has to take Ayton, which creates a 2-on-1 advantage on the weak side. As Bron turns, he stares at Rui in the corner, sending this defender on a closeout and leaving Bronny all by himself. What separates him from a lot of other playmakers is that he's not going to settle for what the defense wants to give up. He knows what to look for. Like on this play, a skip pass to Rui is a pretty standard read. It would create a long closeout and get the defense in rotation. However, Podziemski has no chance of stopping Ayton in the paint, and that's higher percentage offense. Basically, he's got something he can turn to against every coverage. And that starts without the ball. This time his defender tries to deny the touch by fronting him, so he just cuts backdoor for a layup. For 2 decades, a LeBron-led offense started with a high ball screen. You'll still see a heavy diet of high ball screens, just not as many from the big. Instead of a pick and roll, they're hunting for smaller players, then clearing out. And once he's got space to attack a mismatch, defenses are forced to answer impossible questions. So LA's offensive scheme without Reaves or Luka has been all about finding different ways to handpick matchups. Sometimes that means having Bron screen a smaller player. Here's one where he gets a switch, gets fronted and cuts back door, only to throw a mid-air touch pass to a cutting Ayton. A big part of why this works is that Bron sets really effective screens, which then forces other defenders to make decisions. Like, do you give up a mismatch? On this one, Draymond says no, scrams the smaller defender out of there and takes Bron himself, only that creates a mismatch for Ayton to attack, resulting in easy points at the rim. Another way you'll see them look for mismatches is with those down screens I mentioned. On this one, Flag's a little late getting out on a switch, leaving Bron with space to attack off the catch. Sometimes they'll reverse these actions, using Bron as a screener. They don't want to give up a switch, so Christie chases Kennard over the top, and now he's got a lane to get to the paint and set up Ayton. By simply punishing mismatches, the offense unlocks tons of options. When Kennard runs off a flare, they don't want to switch. Same thing when Ayton comes to set a ball screen. Draymond's up in a higher drop. But when LeBron moves into a ball screen for Kennard, he makes perfect contact, and now they've got the switch they want. They immediately clear that side of the floor to post him up, and help Slate coming over so he's got a layup. Then a couple minutes later, they set it up again. Remember, they don't want to switch the initial flare screen, but this time Kennard gets free and steps into a jumper. When the offense runs through Bron, they hit so many different pressure points that it leads to a real well-rounded attack. And it's all centered around the fact that they know defenses don't want to switch with their smaller players. It looks like they're running spread pick and roll, but that's actually a decoy to get Gafford switched on to Bron so that he can go and screen for Kennard. If the Mavs switch this, Bron's got the mismatch, but also Gafford doesn't want to leave him, so Kennard has space to get to the paint. They actually went back to this action in the fourth, but with an added wrinkle. While Bron gets a screen from Hayes to get a switch onto the big, LaRavia setting a down screen for Rui to get a switch onto a small. Then Bron sets up the two-man game with Rui. Again, they're not going to let him get a mismatch, so Rui has room to turn the corner and get to a jumper. Regardless of whatever action they're setting up, it's always quick and deliberate. As soon as the middle of the floor opens up, Bron goes to screen for Kennard. This time it doesn't create an advantage, so they reset up top, with Kennard setting an immediate go screen for Bron, and with no help at the nail, he's got a free lane to the basket. Again, this all comes back to avoiding the switch. The Warriors give it up a little bit easier, and once Bron gets the ball with a spread floor, they don't have a lot of options. They load up at the nail, leaving LaRavia on the wing for a quality look from 3. Because of the speed of these actions, defenders have to make split-second decisions. This time, Brooks is thinking switch, while Gillespie wants to recover, and that miscommunication leads to Bron getting a deep post touch. Like I said, the defense is at his mercy, as he once again stares down Rui to make Brooks leave the wing, which creates a wide-open 3 for the league's most accurate shooter. Now, you could make the argument that against a team with no mismatches, Bron wouldn't be able to create as many obvious advantages. And it's true that with good switching, most of these issues don't exist. My only question is, how many teams can actually field out lineups without a small for LeBron to attack? The Thunder? Some lineups from the Rockets or the Pistons? He's so big, strong, and skilled that even a lot of elite perimeter defenders are considered a mismatch. So he still creates a ton of advantages when the offense runs through him, even if it's in a different way from what we've become accustomed to over the last 2 decades. In these last 4 games, we're only a fraction of what we've seen throughout the season. Most of his time was spent in that more connective off-ball role. So when he shared the court with both Luka and Reaves, he's been good for an efficient 20 points and 6 assists, while helping the Lakers to one of the best offenses in the league. What we're focused on, though, is what he's looked like without either of them in nearly 500 minutes. During that time, he's averaged a slightly less efficient 31 points and 11 assists, while the Lakers have been every bit as good on offense. So there's a clear signal that LeBron, at age 41, in year 23, still has the ability to ramp up his volume and play the role of a lead ball handler. The only question is, to what extent? For 8 or 9 minutes a game, it's easy. How long can he sustain it, though? 4 games? 5 games? An entire playoff series or playoff run? Well, there's a chance we might get some answers, because with playoff basketball less than a week away and still no update on the status of either Luka or Reaves, the Lakers might be in desperate need of one last superhuman performance.